another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I'm Tim Sohn here, hanging out with the bears, turkeys, the occasional human being, and I'm excited for this episode of the Tim and Jim Show. But first, before another bear roams through something, I'm going to turn it over to my friend, my trusty co-host, Mr. Jeff Hughes. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Tim. This is going to sound funny, but we are so excited because we got new doors for our house.
Ooh.
And we actually got a sliding glass door that has a screen. We didn't have a screen before, so we can actually open the sliding glass door and let the outside in because none of our windows have screens. So if we open them, we get all kinds of bugs in. So we're excited about doors. I know it's kind of weird. And then of course I have to give you my latest sports news, Tim. The Atlanta Braves beat the Dodgers last night 3-1. So got to watch that on TV. So exciting. Go Braves. As you know, I'm a Brave season ticket holder, so I have to give them my 2 cents in, since maybe they'll bring me into the press box, because look what you got to do earlier today. Why don't you tell everyone? I thought that was pretty exciting news.
Thanks for mentioning it, Jim. Jim, this morning I was at the local television station here in Milford, Pennsylvania, Channel 13 here in Milford. Shout out to Channel 13. They actually interviewed me about the fundraiser that's coming up on Friday, Open Your Hearts and Wallets for Blood Cancer, as part of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society Man and Woman of the Year philanthropic competition that I'm part of, and Rob's part of the volunteer team for that, as well as many other people who are helping out with it. So they interviewed me. I think it's going to appear tonight at 5 o'clock on the local television station here, Channel 13. So thank you to them for having me. It was a great experience. So thanks for mentioning that, Jim.
Awesome. And so I'm really excited about our guest today, because this isn't a topic we always get to talk about, but I'm excited about the topic because it's something that that my wife and I do a lot in our spare time, not virtually, but in person. And that we've got Rob Statham with us here today. And we're going to talk about how to bring happiness and joy through virtual tasting experiences. Now, who would have thought? But I think there's a lot to be said for this. So, Rob, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point where you're doing virtual tastings. 'Cause, right, this is an international show because you're in Canada, correct?
I am, yeah. No, thank you for having me, Tim and Jim. Great intro to the show, by the way. I was like, hey, I just felt like partying right away with the music going on. It kind of is synonymous with why I got into this business. So I've always been in hospitality, even into my 20s in university. When I left university, graduated, I went into the cruise line industry, spent about 10 years there, and had a very different journey. I went into IT about 4.5, 5 years. I had mixed reviews and successes with it. A lot of sleazy people in that industry. No offense to anyone in IT, but especially in the consulting contracting world and bidding on government contracts, which is what I was doing. So I had a business at the time called CDMS Technology Group. There's a difficult owner tied to that, or a partner tied to that, in Montreal. And I had a pretty sleazy partner that ended up having a drinking problem and ripped off a lot of people, including quite a bit of money off myself and a lot of consultants. So I was out of flux. And at the time, I'd been bartending at a hotel for a couple of years. I was at the Ottawa Marriott Hotel, which I still have a very much a active part-time side gig role. I do comedy clubs in there 3 or 4 nights a week right now to recover a bit of cash flow from the pandemic. And it's a great gig. But this sort of tied me. This all ties together because this put me into this journey. So I grew up with my father making wine and beer, and he was prolific, had a lot of books on it. My dad was actually quite knowledgeable. I'm pretty sure he would have done very well in a lot of the sommelier courses and exams on the wine and beer side of things. So I was at his house, in my late father's house, and this is going back, about 11 years ago. And I was in transition. I was like talking about doing my PMP at the time, but I didn't really love information technology. I didn't really have a passion for it. I was pretty good at it, but I just didn't like it enough. And he could see that. And he looked at me and he said, all this stuff's coming a dime a dozen. Why don't you get into the wine and beer world? So I looked at him. I said, okay, I could look into that. So I started probing around at a couple job sites about it, and I knew a couple people that were wine reps, and they started talking to me about the Wine Spirit Education Trust program, which is actually the godfather or godmother of the entire world of wine education. Formally, it's out of London, England. It's been around since, I believe, 1969 or 59. I'm trying to remember. It's one or the other. But this ties back to the wine guilds of the 14th century. So the roots in this are really old. So a lot of your masters of wine come through the WSET program. They get the diploma, they qualify for the MW, the Institute of Masters of Wine, and they go from there. So I started my coursework doing the level 2, the intermediate. Then I did my advanced level, level 3. And then I went to work with another company. I fell in love with this. I went to work with a company called Groovy Grapes on the side doing events. And I wanted to learn the event business. So the journey really developed from there. And that's really where it springboarded. And, you know, somebody asked me, and I've got to write something for a company called Cheftorial I'm partnered with. They do virtual dinner party experiences that I'm part of. And they wanted to say what my greatest wine experience would be. Well, I would say I'd have to thank my father for that, because if he didn't motivate and inspire me to get into it, I wouldn't be here. It doesn't matter what vineyard you visit or distillery or brewery. I would not have embarked on this journey without words of encouragement from him. And I always joke, it was the second time I listened to him on career advice. And, you know, magically, both times it worked out very well. One was to stay in the cruise line industry for a while, and the other one was to go into this. And you know, I got to thank him up in heaven for a lot of things, and that this is definitely one of them.
Wow. What a story. And I mean, you got me interested, because like we were talking about before the show, and
bourbon.
Well, bourbon, bourbon, wine, beer, I've tried all of it, and it's interesting because I know I've watched some shows on Hulu. They have like the history of Scotch, the history of bourbon, and they also was a series about these guys becoming sommeliers. And oh my gosh, that is like I can't even imagine. So hats off to you to going through this educational journey, because I don't think people realize how much goes into that. I mean, it's
yeah,
amazing.
no, you're right on that. And it's like even bartending, they don't realize, oh, hey, well, that bartender, why do they make so much money behind the bar? Just bartenders. You hear that crap out of people's mouths sometimes. And yeah, that's great. You can say that, but even on that level, you have to manage cash flow, your inventory. You have to have cocktails ingrained in your head. You have to manage the client's expectations, and you have to manage people as they get drunk to cut them off. And, there's liability there as well. And they wonder why. Then they understand why you make so much money, because it's actually a highly skilled labor position. Well, if you get into the world of wine and spirits, it's an offshoot of it. Yes, it's also very highly skilled. I won't dismiss one from the other. Bartenders, it's one thing that I loved about the gig is that it actually gets you hands-on with the booze, and it makes you work with it. So you start looking at the wine, spirits, and beer. You're like, hey, yeah, I know about Pinot Noir. I know about Cabernet Sauvignon. I know about a stout. I know about an IPA and the origins of that. And we've got a Hefeweizen, which is a wheat beer, which is like a Belgian wit or white beer like Hogarten, but German style and a little stronger. And I mean, you start to understand how all these things come together. And it is true. And I think people do understand that there is quite a bit of work that goes into being a sommelier or a beer sommelier, whether that's through Prud'homme or Cicerone on the other side of things. The exams aren't easy. They're routed, and they're very deeply embedded in history and the economy, because history and economy tie together throughout their entire existence, as well as, the tasting components, what it pairs with, the blind tastings, how to find out what typicity is, which is typical for that particular style, which, probably about 90% of what you drink falls within the brackets of typicity. And then it's to try to navigate that other 10% on top of it, and to really, in the end, share all this in a way that doesn't bore your listener, but also gets them excited about what's in that glass.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So, Tim, should we get started with the questions? We'll have you start with question 1, because you can tell that Rob knows his stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I was also just going to say, I think it's really special that even though, your dad is passed now, and I think it's really special that, he encouraged you to go down this route, and that you're you're carrying that on.
Yeah, it's funny that I fell into things that he was good at that I became good at. I guess there is a hereditary aspect, right? He was good at sports. I got good at sports. He was a naval officer, spent time at sea, loved it. I went to the cruise line industry and spent time at sea. He makes wine and beer. Well, hell, I don't make it, but I enjoy it and I share the joy of it. And that's really the impetus of any tasting party is the experience and the joy and happiness that you bring with it, and the unity, because you bond everybody together over this experience.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So on that note, Rob, so what got you started with virtual tastings anyway?
Well, the pandemic. I mean, hell, I hate to use that word, that bastardized term, pivot, because we've all had to pivot. I mean, we all had to pivot, including you, Tim and Jim. I mean, partly what makes this show great is it really got to take off because of the pandemic. And think about live shows and how live streaming has exploded because of the pandemic. Well, so has virtual tastings. It's live tastings took a huge hit. Nobody was meeting in anywhere. I mean, event space was literally wiped out across North America. So I decided to go virtual. And, I launched this in the late summer of 2020. Nobody knew what was happening. I remember we were all at a loss for the first 4 months of the pandemic. Are they going to come out with a vaccine? Is this just going to blow over like a common flu? How far is this going to go? How deep are the lockdowns going to go? Nobody knew. When are we going to get together? Because at the time, there was pockets of us able to get together here, even in Canada in the summer. Restrictions had lifted a bit. And then it sort of hammered into the fall. And I realized, no, we're going to be in another brutal lockdown for a long period of time. And that was the longest one we endured. So I launched virtual tastings as a way of getting people together. And it was a way to get companies together. I really focused on corporate. I'm a much bigger fan of corporate than consumer, because you already have a captive audience with a corporate setting and you have a unified audience. So I worked on that. And really, then I started to realize the huge benefits of it. You heard Google saved over $1 billion in the first few months of the pandemic just on corporate travel alone. Then I realized, well, if that's the case, nobody's going to spend the money on virtual travel ever, or corporate travel ever again like they did before. Nobody. You'd be insane as a business owner or a board of directors to do so. So everything transferred to virtual. It just makes sense to do it, especially if you're like an alumni association and you're doing fundraising, or we're doing a cancer drive and fundraising from different parts of the country or the continent. You can bring people together through a virtual event, and tasting parties are no different. In fact, on the journey, it's much the same. You get a list of what people recommended, list of what people have to buy. They go out and buy it, and then you put it together and put a whole program together and guide them through it. And it evolved as I evolved. I got caught up, getting into too much of the factual side of things at times. And you just gradually learn to tweak it more into a party. So now I instantly crack a drink with them, welcome them to the event, and then we just sort of guide through it and go from there. And the engagement of it's really high, because not only do you knock out corporate travel, which is a huge benefit to a business, they can take that money and redirect it elsewhere. A lot of people are going to be permanently working partly from home. The office is never going to be fully returned to. So you can take a lot of those dollars and invest it in better equipment, maybe even better salaries. A novel idea there. Let's pay people together in inflationary periods of time. But you also have the emissions. It controls emissions, because if everyone's meeting virtually, you're not driving or flying all over the place. The other part of it is inclement weather. How many times have you been to a live event where it just gets crushed day of because it decides to have hail, rain, or snow, or sleet, or a hurricane, or whatever it might be the day of your event? Totally sabotages it. That you do not have to worry about with a virtual event. As well as it's a seamless way to engage people in different regions of the world. Now that people are working remote, a lot of companies have people working in pocket places throughout the globe. What better way do you have than to engage them virtually? And I think this goes through all kinds of things, not just virtual tasting parties, but friends of mine who do virtual yoga sessions now, or fitness classes. You can do mentoring and coaching virtually. So this whole platform, I believe, is really, really here to stay.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think, people talk about hybrid and, but I think what you're talking about, especially with the tastings, I mean, even from a safety perspective, right? I don't have to worry about driving after the event. 'cause they're talking
Liability.
about alcohol. I could wear my pajamas, I guess, if I want to while I'm, but
the boxer shorts underneath
Right,
the dress shirt
right.
over the dress shirt because you're sitting down. You can have the boxer shorts on.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
That's
It's
right.
true. Just don't stand up on camera. I might
That's
add.
right. But that might happen, more likely to happen if you had a couple drinks, I think. So, but no, I think that's great points, and it's definitely something. I mean, just in general, like I know in the wine industry, I've seen it probably more so. Like my wife does, I think it's called naked wine. So you get wine shipped to your door.
Yes. Yes.
So it's
Yeah,
become
that's
a
all
much
exploding.
bigger
Oh
a much
yeah.
bigger thing.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is on the whole of wine space and the event space, you nailed it. You also nailed liability. But the other part is often in the old event structure, I come from hotels and cruise ships. Cruise ships are pretty seamless on events, but hotels, they tend to underpay their staff. It's, you get an events team and a sales team that are underpaid. They're a bit disengaged. They just do it because it's a job in a lot of cases. If you're trying to plan a live event, well, you got to pay somebody from your office or your own events team to engage with them. And this could take several site visits. It could take months of work. What you could do in the matter of a couple of days of a discovery call, some planning, a discussion over Zoom with someone like myself, and just get the event off the ground. So not only are you hacking out cost, you're chopping down a lot of time.
Right.
And that we've expanded also on the whole virtual dinner party experience. So a chef comes in, I pair the wines and beer with the food. We both share the topic together. We get into the discussion. People get in there cooking and they get in there drinking. And you should see this level of engagement just takes it at a whole new level. So there's a lot of things that you can really do with this.
Wow. And that kind of leads to Chris Stone has a really good question. So what platforms are you using to run these virtual events?
I use Zoom. So I use Zoom Professional.
Okay.
I find it's the best one. I've used Google when Zoom I discovered doesn't really guide you through Zoom well. Its support isn't like StreamYard or Riverside FM, which I find have strong support. Zoom, it takes days for somebody to get a hold of you. And I found out in my early stages, oh man, no wonder it's crashing. I have to do updates. So I just sync it to auto update now, but that will paralyze Zoom. So you got to be cautious of that. But I find Zoom really works better than Meets, Google Meets, or Microsoft Teams. I find it's actually a more seamless experience. And you can do the screen sharing on topics as well. You can bring up charts, maps. I don't do a whole lot of that, but that's something I'm going to start adding into it. They now have a whiteboard, so you can draw out things as you're talking, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a new thing that just launched with Zoom. So I find Zoom is really, really good for that. Don't use Zoom for podcasts. I did that in the beginning. It's a lot more work for your videographer to sync everything together, and it's clunky. Use StreamYard or Riverside FM for that type of thing. But yeah, no, Zoom is definitely a great one to use for virtual events. I find you can now, if you're doing events over 100 people in a really large scale, there are other platforms I would look into that professionally cater to events where you separate people much more seamlessly into breakout rooms and other discussion rooms and other discussion chambers like you'd be at a live event. But for the nature of my events, the sweet spot is usually 30 to 50 people. Seldom does it get well over 50. I mean, I've done them for up to 80, 85, 100, but that's sort of the cap off rate.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Have you tried using eCam or as a virtual camera or anything like that with Zoom, or have you just stuck to the plain Zoom?
I just stuck to the plain Zoom and just hooked up a 1080p wide camera that I'm on right now by Logitech. Get a good webcam. Make sure you have a good microphone. I mean, in the beginning, I had plugged in Apple headset. I didn't even know to use this thing initially. And I'm like, wait a second, I've had this thing collecting dust for 4 years, this 1080p camera. Let's pull it out. Right. So I discovered that was good. And then it was through podcasting, I discovered how important effective audio is. So I recommend getting a hold of a good mic. You can really start with a decent mic at $70, $80 and work your way up to $500-$600. It depends on what you want to do and how professional of a grade you want to work with it. But these are all things to keep in mind. You want to have some form of kind of fun backdrop. I mean, my backdrop has to evolve. I find that there's always things that you have to evolve and build. Yeah. But don't be shy to recognize you're always growing. That's the other part.
And before we go to our next question that we have, this is actually a good question because you're talking about this So Chris Stone wants to know, do you have a podcast?
Yes, absolutely. So I have the Drunken Grape YouTube channel, and within that's the Virtual Happy Hour Experience playlist. So almost each and every week, and Tim's been a guest. I think Russ Hedge, some of our mutual
Thanks for
friends
having
have
me.
been guests. Nancy Burrows, DJ Durant, some awesome people. Almost every week, I feature someone where they're extraordinary people. They've triumphed over great adversity to make up big legs and strides in their career or their current endeavor or their entrepreneurial journey. And we break bread over drinks. So I do have that. So make sure to check that out. It's a budding channel. I invite you all to subscribe. There's a new short little video I put in to do that as well. And wow, YouTube is another beast altogether. I find that it's potentially the best to use as a channel. It's because you can monetize it, but it's also difficult to gain a lot of views and hits if you do not know how to use it. And a lot of that's linked. Actually, I'll share a little tidbit of something I've learned. Tag your title into the description and the descriptor words of the first 200 words. So if the key is happy hour, write happy hour about 3 times in the first 200 words of the description. It's the first tag or two within the headline title of your video, and your SEO score will go from like 20 to 95 out of 100 right away.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know TubeBuddy, if you use it, will even
that's what I do use. Yeah. And it's like I by fluke discovered that 2 days ago. I was wondering, I kept getting, all these, everyone loves the LinkedIn guy saying, hey, I see that your channel only has 370 subscribers. I'm at about 358 now, but I mean, it's a slow and gradual build. We can help you get to thousands. I'm like, first of all, I'm not paying for a following through Fiverr. It's all bullshit. It's like joining engagement pods and expecting revenue to come from it, even though you now have 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. Doesn't work that way at all. But TubeBuddy's amazing. It actually guides you through all that stuff. And it's funny because it's not about the quality of your presentation so much as about how effective you're marketing it and using those search engine optimization tools on YouTube to build the channel.
Right. And
awesome.
so look, we're going to go to our next question. And then after this next question, we're going to take a word from our sponsors at StreamYard. But how can a business use virtual tastings to grow business? And this actually ties in to a question we had from Shannon, which, and with business, also nonprofits, maybe as a fundraising aspect.
Well, the problem with local events is they're local. They're isolated to a region or a city or a province, but they're isolated. Virtual events are able to pull everyone from different time zones and different countries and boundaries. You really create a completely borderless universe through a virtual event. And by that borderless universe, you can engage and bring in anybody that might be a prospect from any part of the world into your event space. And with that, that allows you to prospect. I mean, there's a project I've developed that I'm working on with a company called Cheftorial. Now, they do the virtual dinner parties. I come in as their sommelier. I'm actually part of their process, but I'm also a business partner. I'm not an employee there. And the owner, Rivers Corbett, and Chef Jillian Anderson are amazing people. She was the international trainer for the Pampered Chef. So you can imagine her training, her presentation skills are off the hook. So with that, what we find is virtual tastings really bring people together in a very engaging and positive experience. So internally, what this does is if your people are happier and more productive, what does productivity lead to? Much higher profitability. Now, if you're trying to prospect, and this project we're working on is the virtual dinner party experience with real estate agents. So if you sell a home of over $1 million, what does a person want to do with a luxury home? They want to throw a party and showcase it. Well, with the pandemic, it's very hard still to fly people or meet together and have people from around the country, and rich people like to fly and travel, but it's not really as conducive as it was. So what you do is you host a virtual dinner party experience instead. And where this helps, this could apply to people in the financial world, people in the tech world. Well, if you're the one paying for it, i.e. the realtor, you're going to sit in on it, right? And say that person draws 20 or 30 guests to the virtual dinner party experience that you paid for, which is a huge tax write-off against your $30,000 or $50,000 commission check to spend a couple grand doing this. What this does is it opens up a prospect pond for you as well. So all these people are engaged in a great mood. It's like being on the golf course. Business isn't done in the office. It's done at places where people are experiencing a good time while business is being conducted and discussed. And this opens up the whole prospecting chamber for them. So there's many facets that come to life through this.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I had never thought of that. But yeah, I mean, even if you were to go, like you said, go back as a realtor, right? Go back to some of your recent customers, past customers, and
Yeah.
invite them to a virtual tasting. Like, hey, I just wanted to get you all together, have some fun because I, appreciate you. That's a great idea. I mean, I could see where that could apply to a lot of businesses. And like you said, now you don't have to worry about getting everybody there. I mean, I think that's part of what, for me, Tim, I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah.
These last couple of years, it's like I can do a lot more virtually because I can schedule it, and I know I don't have to worry about travel and I might make it back in time, and it can.
Not only that, gas costs. Gas. I don't know about gas is doing in the States, but thanks
It's
to
crazy.
Trudeau and his insane carbon taxes, and the far left is all supportive of this. I'm certainly not conservative. I'm a guy that's probably just like yourselves, right smack down the middle, going, okay, I agree with social policy, but let's manage the economy. Let's have the numbers in place. But soaring gas prices certainly not helping push people to cleaner cars. It's just pissing people off. But that piss off factor is, well, damn it, I got to spend a fortune driving from Ottawa to Toronto now. It's a 250-mile drive. That $50 tank of gas is now $100. And I got to spend that $100 going back just to attend a little party for a few hours on a weekend. That really matters. Well, hell, why not do it virtually? Because not only that, it's all the time consumed to commute alone. And you're right, Tim, you can schedule it. So you know what's going on in advance. And you can say, you know what? All I have to do is spend an hour getting ready, jump in the shower, shave, brush my teeth, make sure I have clean clothes, clean up the setting at the cameras, displaying things on, get everything prepped and prepared for it. Boom, I'm ready. You're not spending hours just driving to get out of a car, flustered or frustrated to jump to that event. Or if you're lucky enough, you can fly in the night before, but then you're spending a bunch of money in a hotel room in most cases.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rob. And I think too, it's really gonna be a hybrid world going forward, right? People are gonna want a combination of. People are gonna want a combination of. They're gonna want virtual because they're gonna want to, they're gonna want. In some cases, they're gonna want to be. They're not gonna want the hassle of going places sometimes, but they're also going to want in-person contact in certain circumstances as well, because we've been missing that so much as well. So I think it's going to be a combination, right?
No, and that's a very wise point too. So what you can do naturally with a hybrid is if you're hosting a dinner party at your new house, well, you can have the 10 or 12 people in your living room. Most people have a good 60, 70-inch TV, at least a 55-inch TV screen they can hook up to a Zoom call. You just plug in your HDMI cable from your computer, boom, to your TV, and bang, you're on. Put in the sound and audio. Well, other people could be doing the same to enhance their experience too. So you actually have pockets of full live small scale parties going on that are all connected virtually at the same time.
Wow, that's great point. That's amazing.
Mic drop from Rob the Drunken Bee.
All right, so we're gonna take a quick word from our friends over at StreamYard, and we'll be back to StreamYard.
Shout out to StreamYard, great software tool. What a great video.
Back doing the Tim dance here on the Tim and Jim show. And Rob is confused. He's like, is this Shout Out Saturday? Is this the Tim and Jim show? We're all confused. We have no idea what's going on, what year it is. Welcome back to the Jim and Tim and Jim, whatever show this is. We are talking about virtual tastings and all sorts of things here. And Jim, where should we go from here? We're so excited to have Rob on the show today.
Thanks, man.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a good question,
Jim?
I see that question.
You go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. So, Rob, what are the keys? What are the keys? I don't think I have any keys on. Wait, here we go. What are the keys to success in a virtual tasting experience?
Well, you got to be organized. So, first of all, plan your whole event experience out. You got to sit down and first do a consultative call with someone, whoever that client is, and you got to find out what they're aiming to do. you know, if they're talking about a simple beer dinner and they want to pair food from like compare beers from say North America to Belgium, well, that's what you're going to design your program around. If they want to talk about cold climate, high quality wines like Pinot Noir, as we were discussing in the green room, Jim, you want to map out, you know, what regions in the world produce great Pinot Noir? What's the history behind it? What's the fun facts? What are some of the really renowned wineries? What's their story? What does this pair with? And you have to write this all out in an engagement guide. I don't do anything without, on a large scale or a serious scale, without sending out an engagement guide with it. Ooh. And in there, obviously, suggested food pairings. You know, you break it down for them so that at least they have a skeleton. They have an outline of what's happening in the experience. Now, in the actual virtual tasting experience, I used to ramble for 5 minutes or 10 minutes about my, you know, my background and story before I got into the tasting. That works really well with academic type crowds. As I learned, it doesn't really work so well with the more consumer or social type crowds. Sure. So, I mean, they love the information, don't get me wrong, but you got to open it up with a bang right away. And that's where I crack a welcome drink, like a light glass of sparkling in a wine discussion, or you have a light, like gluten-free lager, like Mongozo, the world's best gluten-free lager. It's Belgian, because you can integrate everybody into these things in a beer tasting. Not everybody's going to be able to tolerate gluten, but they're going to want to sit in on it. Sure. So you crack a welcome drink as you enter it. And then have non-alcoholic options. I'm finding that's more and more the case too. So it's easy to have small beer, which is de-alcoholized, or 0.5% alcohol beer. You're not going to ever really get 0% alcohol beer. And if you do, it's terrible. Stay away from it. But at 0.5%, it's pretty much not going to do anything to you. You might even have as much alcohol in kombucha tea without even realizing it. It's fermented anyway. But the thing is, it's probably less than that, but there'll be still a trace element. Anything fermented, it's going to have a trace element of alcohol to it, typically. So having said that, it's about the experience and engaging them from that point forward. And what you really want to do in a tasting experience is you guide them through. But every few minutes, you want to stop, crack that drink, discuss that drink. What's your experiences with it? You got to get the audience engaged, and then you get them engaged with each other. And what happens when you walk away from your program, you know, I usually plug in 60 to 75 minutes. Often it turns into 90 minutes by the time I can actually get out of there at the Q&A, and they're ready to party, and they just set up their own Zoom call, and they're like, hey, can we just stay on this call? Well, sure. Or if you want to set up your own Zoom call, and they just go and continue the party afterwards. And awesome. You know, that probably gives you the indicators that your virtual event kicked off really well. But the experience really starts with the organization and the process with it. You have to really concretely present that outline called the engagement or experience guide. And I think that's experience. That's just, it is experience and know-how, but this is, if you're coming new into this and you want to do, say, virtual events on tech insights, well, just don't start rambling tech, because that's all over the roadmap. What tech do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about blockchain and crypto or NFTs, the big craze in the market today? Or do you want to talk about IT security or home technical security or whatnot? Well, write your program around that and align everything to it. And make sure the stakeholders that are paying for it and attending it are very interested in this discussion from the get-go. And really that starts first with the consultative or discovery call. Everything starts from there. And then the next step is that engagement guide. And from there, you're going to have a blueprint to run by. And once you have a blueprint, it's pretty the formula is pretty simple.
Wow, that's amazing. And DJ, I agree. Right, Rob, you're so organized and sharp, and love that. Rob is. I know one great place for people to connect with you is over on LinkedIn, and so I've got that running on the ticker.
Cool, awesome.
What would you say, like, if people are wanting to actually do an event, is that something you can help them with?
Absolutely. You know, even if you want to hire me for a bit just to plan an event, I'm not even part of in the end. Contact me.
Okay.
You know, I do have a consultative program. You know, it's a block of, say, 4 hours of time that you can buy, and I can sit down and go with you. I don't go by just single hours. Somebody asked me to do that once. I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. That's not good planning on my half. So got to respect the person on the other end too, right? It's like if I come and ask you guys for a live stream experience, I'm not going to hire you for the hour. I'm going to say, let's book you for at least half a day and find out what's going on and use the time constructively and wisely. Now you can break that up in segments. That's cool. But yeah, they can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. My email is pretty simple. It's rob@thedrunkengrape.com. Doesn't get really much simpler than that. Or info@thedrunkengrape.com is a general mailbox. You can visit the drunkengrape.com website. You know, you can even comment on a YouTube channel and I'm going to get it.
Nice.
We have so many means these days. And do I train others or can I, TJ, I haven't really I'm jumping the gun on you guys answering this question. It's a great question. I do train people on basically how to taste and what to look for. And the easiest way to do that is take two similar wines or beer styles, put them side by side, things that look like each other in a glass, and then start analyzing it. That way you can start to see the differences right away. Or you get a Northeast IPA versus a West Coast IPA. Well, they might look similar, that copper hazy hue tinge in a glass. You know, it might be that medium to dark copper amber, but it definitely taste different. You know, and then you can easily guide people in the basics of what to look for. Just some basic information. That's really, yes, I mean, I've coached people along the way. And I'm also, you know, a mentee of my great friend Jennifer Simonati Bryan, a master of wine on one end, and Roger Middag, the founder of Prud'homme. I still have to do my master beer sommelier level. I'm just one level under that, and that's where I got to go. I've made it 3 levels up the bar to, which is pretty advanced in that program. And I really believe, thanks, man. That happened a while ago. By the time they launched level 4, they didn't have level 4 when I took level 3. And I would have done level 4, and that's a new adaptation by him. But I think in order to train others, you need to be recalibrated and trained pretty regularly yourself too. I think it's like the coach who has a good coach above them, you know, for the real coaches, not the make-believe coaches, because there's a plethora of those too. But for the ones that are actually real business coaches, you know, big shout out to people like Chris DeMullion or my friend Kim Day that have spent at least a dozen years in their field before they went out and started coaching people in either finance or technical tools. I'm pretty sure it's like anything. It's just like even masters still consult with other masters to brush up on things they may be weak in where they could support somebody where they're strong in. I mean, that's really the name of the game, right?
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. So Rob, what do you have coming up that people might be interested in?
Well, if you're a realtor, the big plan right now is to push off that whole plan for realtors. I mean, realty is the big craze right now. Houses are overinflated, but people somehow are still buying them. I don't understand that part, but being realistic, but there is a huge market for it. And obviously it's golden for sellers right now. You can sell your house at almost an all-time high. This is probably the best time in Canada to flip a house right now in particular. And from there, why not engage your friends on the way out or the way in on a party?
Right.
And, you know, and I suggest the realtors use this tool because if you're looking at a 3 or 5% commission cut, that's $30,000 to $50,000 in your hand. Realtors aren't allowed to incorporate in Canada. I'm not sure how that works in the States, but that's a nice tax bill of probably 40% of your income off the bat. And things like this add a great write-off for a great experience and a great prospecting tool at the same time. Why the heck wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing. And Tim, you've got something big coming up, I believe this Friday, right?
Yeah, the cancer.
Yes. Friday is Open Your Hearts and Wallets for blood cancers, a 12-hour fundraiser this time. Starts 8 a.m. Eastern time. So excited to get that going. You can tune in on my LinkedIn profile. You could tune in on the Stone Social Media Solutions YouTube channel, among other places. The best place to go to find everything is donations.perspectivesoncancer.com. We'll be updating the links there, as well as you could make a donation there anytime. Appreciate any donations of any size. Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is such an important organization that's doing such amazing work to, in terms of research, in terms of providing funding, in terms of changing and saving lives of, they don't only help people, survivors as well as family members with blood cancers, but as well as other cancers as well through the work that they do. So just appreciate anything that any of you can do to contribute to the event. Appreciate you all bunches.
You know what? I'm going to add to that event because I was part
please do.
of their volunteer side of it. What a brilliant drive. For those of you that are limited resources, not only is this a tax deduction, but DJ's right. You can also just share this stuff as it goes live. Let your friends know about it. Exposure is always a great way. If you're corporate, a big shout out to some of the CEOs out there who have a lot of money, or owners of big companies, or even mid-sized companies that are very profitable, or small scale. It doesn't matter. If you know somebody that's been impacted by these heinous set of diseases, I've lost my twin from cancer. I lost my dad from leukemia. So it's a direct relation to it. Dig in and donate. $1,000 or $2,000 from your firm goes an awful long way. It's a nice tax write-off on top of it, but why not cut your taxes while helping at the same time? I mean, that's probably a win-win for you. And if you know somebody who's been directly impacted, it's another win, or yourself especially. These things go to really supporting people. I mean, I believe there's a component in the Lymphoma and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society that actually helps fund people while they're going through their treatments, because it's exhausting financially, especially in the States where a Q-tip's $25 in a hospital. And it's no joke. It's not like Canada here where it's socialized medicine, or it's public medicine like it is in most first world countries. This really counts, especially in the United States. And it does count here too, because I believe if we put more funding into it, if the world had come together on cancer like it had on COVID, we would not have a cancer problem today.
100%. 100%. And what Rob just said. And that's so true about the financial part. They have a program called the Copay Finance Assistance Program, I think it is. And I know that program helped me out so much, especially in the early days of being diagnosed. Cancer is expensive. Super expensive.
It bankrupts people. I mean, in the States, it's 100%. Not uncommon for somebody to retire, for instance, as an attorney, work their whole lives, paid for school, which is a fortune, then invest the difference, come out with $2 or $3 million, have what we would perceive as a great retirement, get sick. Insurance companies dump you like a bad habit as soon as you got a pre-diagnosed condition. And then it costs $1 million just to save you or your spouse, and you're actually halfway near bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. That should not ever happen. And by donating and things like this, you're stemming the tide. And if you're hesitant, I want to encourage you by sort of putting out a true word here that might scare you, but it's factual. It could be you next. This does not discriminate, and it doesn't have a timeline. It doesn't just come up going, hey, you're 85, you have cancer now. You can be fit and able. And, I've had friends who are fit and able, dead in their 30s, 20s, 30s, my sister in her 40s. It's just, it doesn't pick and choose. And for those that go through and survive, and Tim can attest to that after going through 15 years of it to come out on the clear, every day is a tear-jerking nightmare, directly or indirectly, not only for you, but for your family, for your friends, for those that know what you're going through. And if you can relieve or alleviate the financial pressure, you're alleviating a huge burden off somebody. You're lifting something massive off their shoulders, like Atlas with the globe, basically. So why not do it? If you can. I understand people are coming out of a pandemic. There's large swaths of the population that can't even afford to throw away an extra $50 right now. For you, I ask just that you share the content and share the exposure and drive it towards people who can make a difference. And for those of you that have 50 or $100 lying around, it's not too much money. Put it in, because this adds up. You get 100 people with $100, you're at $10,000. You get 1,000 people, that's $100,000 right there off $100 donations.
Yep.
You know,
Definitely.
how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you do this? It's one bite at a time too. It's I just ask everyone watching this, it's tuning in, do your part, help us out, help us drive this cause.
Yeah. Well, with
Thank
that,
you, Rob.
we're going
Yeah.
to close. Thank you both. Good luck Friday. Make sure you guys support Tim and everyone else as they do their best to raise money to fight this horrible disease. And we will be back in 2 weeks. We're going to take a break next week, a little self-care, which it's
We
okay to do
are.
that, folks. And so
We
we'll
don't
see
do that
you.
often. We don't
That's
do
right.
that often on the Tim and Jim show. We have this thing where we keep going. But I said to Jim has an amazing project he's working on next week.
Awesome.
And so congratulations to Jim.
Thanks.
For sure. And I said, Jim, it's going to be self-care week because I love doing all these cancer projects, but I am tired.
Yeah.
So it is time for Tim time. It is time for family time. And so we love you all. But next week, it is self-care week. But we will be back the following week for another episode of the Tim and Jim show for sure. We love you all.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Awesome. Cheers. Much love.
Much love.